So I thought I would make this video um, specifically for like my children or people I want to work with or um, anybody or myself, really, is the biggest thing. I keep having all these ideas and I keep putting them down in my journal, and I don't feel like, a notepad. I don't feel like it's enough context to fully understand the concept. And when I start talking about my concepts to other people, they start saying, "Oh man, you should make a video about that," or "Man, like yeah, you going on making a video about that would make a lot more sense," or whatever. So I really badly want to sit there and iron out all these thoughts and put visuals to them and make it very meaningful. However, I got to start somewhere, and today's, very early in the year for me. So I thought, why don't I just go ahead and put out something? And then while I have something out, maybe the idea can get ironed out through comments or through likes or dislikes. And then I can play with visuals like, just other aspects of the video and put out a version 2 and then put out maybe a version 3 and either keep the version up or not. But, anyways, this is the beginning of the video. And with all um, journeys, with all um, ideas, with all inventions, with all stories, right? That's the biggest thing. It all starts somewhere. It all starts at the blank. It all starts at the beginning. Every story ever told started with a person as they are, who they are, when they were, and how they became who they are at the end of the story. So, this is going to be a story of my thoughts on how maybe you should start trying to be a productive person in society or a noble person, as they say. Maybe the other way of looking at it would be um, you put your mask on before trying to help other people. If you ever want to help anybody else, you obviously have to make sure that you yourself are who you are supposed to be first. And for every single individual person, that's a different thing. But we can all understand that we want to make sure that we do things as easy and as most efficiently, as well as like have things flow with you and have things basically just miraculously happen. So there's a lot of things to our world that we can't see, and you would need like a microscope, and then you would have to like video record it, and then you would have to fully understand how everything you're looking at in that microscope is playing a part or not playing a part in your life, and then you would have to find a way to base all that knowledge off of something else that you know to hold true. So it's one of those things where at the end of the day, why are you doing what you are doing every single day? There's obviously a reason, right? So are you waking up the way that you're waking up and taking care of your hygiene the way that you're taking care of your hygiene specifically because you have found that it works for your body the way that it works for your environment and that it's the most sustainable, repeatable, and something everybody can do, right? So the problem in life is that if you are trying to do one thing and everybody in life can't do that one thing, how long are you going to be able to go on doing that one thing? And the idea would be, is this taking away from other people, or do other people have to work for it? And then at that point, are you helping them in certain other ways? So there's a lot of other aspects of every single situation. And the point is that a lot of the things that you are doing on a daily basis has something else incorporated in it that you may or may not be aware of. So the best story that I was told one time was that there was a mother. She was making a ham, and that ham had to go in a pan, and then it had to go in the oven, and then she had to glaze it and do all the things that she does. Well, whenever she went to go, whenever the mother, I should say the wife at this point, because maybe she doesn't have kids or maybe she does. So the wife at this point goes to make the ham for the husband, and she immediately goes and cuts off the end and goes and puts it in the oven and cooks it just like her grandma always did. And the husband's like, "Why'd you cut off the end? That was the best part." And she's like, "Oh, well, that's just how my grandma always did it." So her grandma was there the other day, or the next day. So then she asked her grandma, "Why do you always cut off the end of the ham?" And she said, "Oh, well, because the pan that I had was too small and I could only fit so much, and everybody liked that part of the ham." So this whole time she could have been making the whole ham because she had the pan for it, but she's been cutting off the end. And it's just one of those things where, as I guess a dominant person in your life, and you want to be more dominant because you want to make sure you yourself are doing what you want as opposed to what everybody else is telling you to do, you would want to figure out what it is. Like you would want I jumped to thought after thought, and then I was thinking about dominant, and then I stopped thinking about whatever else it was that I was thinking about before that. It was really important, so I'm trying to go back to it, otherwise I can just keep going. But I don't want to. I'm going to try to figure out what it was. So the point is about the dominant is that if you're trying to be dominant, you're doing it for something for a specific reason because you want a specific outcome. Your will be done, I think is what I said before that. And the idea that if you yourself think that you are the brightest light and you want that light to shine, you should then be the loudest voice and the squeakiest wheel or the most helpful, So maybe, there's 5 ways of somebody learning something. Maybe you don't want to be the telling them. Maybe you want to be the example, or maybe you want to be like, "Oh, yeah, you always know what to do," right? As if giving them like the idea that, yeah, you should always be doing whatever it is that is supposed to be the right thing to do, quote unquote. Based on your opinion of what would be right and wrong. And that's just for us to understand maybe you don't know what's right and wrong. And maybe for you to stop and find a central point that you can back up to, maybe then you can figure out what's right and wrong. Because realistically, at the end of the day, your nature, your God, your understanding of that, and your karma maybe even, it all comes down to that idea of whatever it is that you hold true and whatever you understand. It'll dictate how you interact with your world. So the more you understand, or the more you try to stop thinking about what you know and try to think about what it is that you could possibly know, or what could possibly be possible based on what you know, as opposed to, "Oh, I know this is only what it can mean." No, that's a variable. You at that time, you found that piece of information, and that's a variable of what the truth could be. And whenever you keep finding out that same exact piece of information, you are technically finding out more variables that bring you further and further, or closer and closer to the truth. So the point is, and I'll say that a million times, so I'm sorry, this is the beginning, the sum of everything that I would like to say is that when you come back to an idea of just understanding, it isn't placing a definite 100% or 0% on anything. It's basically a container that holds it. And that's why I wanted to name this video Zero, because zero is a container. And all zero is it's the beginning and it's the end. It could mean infinity, meaning it's never going to end, or it could mean nothing, because it's just a container held there to let everybody know that there will be a value here one day, or the fact that this has no value is a piece of information for you to judge as a variable. So then if you saw that it's 0, 0, 0, 0, and then 3 days from now it goes up to 1, now all of a sudden that's a variable. And when you look at that variable over time, you can start to see trends. And once you start to see trends, you start to understand what the possible likelihood that it's going to happen in the way that you think and want it's going to happen again. But without that kind of information, without that kind of data, you're not able to understand that. And the whole point that you really want to understand is that you want to keep looking for information, but whenever you get this information as a normal, rational human being, you're going to try to base that information off of other information that you've already got that you already know to be true. And then if this is true and that's true, then you're basically putting all of that together, allowing it to come as an actual thought, or as a fact, as something that you allow to alter the next decision and the next decision and the next decision. Because every decision that you make and every thought that you decide to focus on is basically like a pathway to the next moment. So if you want to truly time travel, or if you want to truly blank, 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 just think about that place that you want to go, and you'll go there. Because we think that there is no way for you to move a mountain, right? There's no way that you can possibly blank or blank or blank. But in your dreams you can, and then eventually your dreams become reality if you're able to train your being, your human body, to play out those scenarios. And the only way to get your human body to be controllable and to actually do what you want it to do is to get all of your skills honed and get all of your habits and get all of your patterns and build all the neurological links in your head, the pathways, so that way your brain knows what to do when the time comes to do it. So if you think about all of the great people that you want to be like, or that you want to admire, they were able to perform when they were at that moment, right? They were able, when the opportunity was available to them, they were able to just execute. They were able to just do it. And it didn't just come one day. They were actually able to do all these skills over and over and over again, and then eventually one day the right opportunity came along and they just performed the skills just like they did every other time. And every time they put the same enthusiasm in it, so it's just like the every other time. And it ended up resulting in a possibility, because it's easier to get 30 customers than it is to get one customer, because you're hitting 1,000 doors to get 30 customers, right? But then you're like, oh, I only need to hit 30, and then that means, so I only have to hit like a portion of that. I only have to hit a couple hundred, so I'm just going to do a couple hundred. I only need one customer. And then you end up getting no customers and you can't figure it out. So it also takes other people buying to buy again. And the other idea is that all ideas and thoughts are kind of in the air. So that could be as simple as, well, the look on that face told me everything, to as complicated as 37, 37 in your head, 37, 37, just sitting there thinking it over and over again, 37, 37. And all of a sudden the person's like, 37. I don't know why. I just got this idea that, say 37. At a certain degree, maybe that's possible. Maybe you're able to tune into that person. Maybe there's enough energy. Maybe there's enough blah, 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 right? So if that's even a possibility in anybody's world, then you just thinking positive thoughts, and you just being positive, and you just having, every moment moving towards positive, 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 then all the people around you will react that way, and they could potentially want to do more interactions with you. And that's kind of the goal, right? You want to be likable, because when you're likable, people want you around. And when people want you around, you can be socially healthy, right? You need people around to fill in all of your mistakes and fill in all of your possibilities of, lacking, to just being there for love, to an actual chemical balance where your body has the ability to like harmoniously sync its heart rate with other people, or things like that. The other idea is the closer proximity that you are to somebody and the longer exposure that you are to someone, the more likely you are to mimic who they are and what they are. So the idea that I'll get into in a future video would be that you are the average of the 3 to 5 people that you spend the most time around. I say 3 because I'm an introvert and I only spend around 2 people around a day, and then there's like one other third person. So take everything I say as a grain of salt from an introvert who doesn't socially interact a trillion ton. Do service, talk to people every day to work on whatever, but that's different. The idea here is to find your center, find your nature, and find what around you is influencing you or not influencing you to potentially decide to do what you keep doing. So maybe take some time back and look at your finances, look at your habits, look at your tasks that you do daily, look at what it is that you spend your most time on, look at your screen time, look at what it is that you look at on your screen time, and then just see if there's a way to alter any of those things a little bit more positive. And like I said, this is for everybody. This is for me. This is for my children. This is for other people that maybe I want to be friends with, or work with. And this idea is for me to really figure out like where every idea is that it comes from. Because if you're on your phone and you're sitting there thinking about this all day, where did that thought come from and why are you thinking about that? And a lot of times you'll look through your phone and your algorithm and you'll go, oh, it's because I keep looking up that item and I keep looking up that thought. You looked it up. What do you mean? Like you went on your phone and you went to the search thing and you typed in that specific thing? No, you didn't. It popped up on your thing. You looked at it for longer than you looked at something else. Your phone now figured it out. Relationships are the same way. So that if your phone has the ability to keep sending you the same information over and over and over and over and over and over again, and then all of a sudden now it's controlling your entire day because that's all you're thinking about. What if your buddy was like really into some specific cartoon or specific character, and all of a sudden every single time you saw him, you were like, hey, remember that character? That would be all he would think about whenever he saw you. Also, it would be consuming his day thinking about this thing because maybe it triggers a response in his brain that causes more thoughts like that to happen. So you yourself, obviously are going to have that happen to you every single day where somebody says something. You'll be walking by them and they'll say a number and you'll hear a number. And that number will cause you to think of something else, and then it'll cause you to think of something else and something else and something else. And the idea here is that your mind should be like a vault. Disciplined, educated, but also open-minded. But in order of after educated and after disciplined. Because if you're not disciplined, then you're just going to bend over backwards, and then any new thought that you have, it's on to the new one, it's on to the next one, it's on to the next one, it's on to the next one. I have a problem where I can only focus on one thing at a time. So because I can only focus on one thing at a time, I will study one subject for up to 3 months if I'm super into it, but it's usually in that spell of either 3, 6 months or 9 months. Everything kind of has that same sequence. And I will just kind of for a couple days, for a couple weeks, or whatever it is, however intrigued I am, and I'll just try to learn as much as I can about that one subject, and then I'll move on to the next one, I'll move on to the next one. And in my head, I'm trying to remember it and then create it into muscle memory and then never have to worry about it again. And that worked out really good all the way up until a couple years ago where I started going, oh, yeah, I remember that. But I want to show you that, like, I saw a video on it, or I saw this article on it, or I actually know because I have the documentation where it lists all the specific measurements. So all you have to do is literally just go, but I don't have that kind of memory. So a couple years ago, I decided to get it all put together. So I started putting notes together. And then it's like, well, now I'm looking through the notes, and I'm like, how long ago was this? And then it's like, well, how this, how that? And then I'm like, well, how can I remove all this thinking again? Like, how can I get back to like less, right? And I started just numbering everything, inventorying it, right? So now it's an individual thing. It's all by itself. It has a number. If I ever want to refer to it and I can't think of what it's called, just the number, just refer to the number. And then in your notes, you can refer to the number because then you can just be like, oh, refer to this number. And then that number goes over to there. And then that number tells you the entire big thing. But then you can go back and you don't have to sit there and be like, well, what's it called? And then explain part of it and do something like that. So, with these notes, I started numbering them. And because I started numbering them, the numbering system is very simple. Every minute is a different number. So you then can have an infinite amount of numbers throughout the day. And then if you needed to, just add some more decimals behind it. So now I don't have to ever think about where a thought is or what a thought is. Like, I at least now know the date, and I at least have it inventoried, and at least whatever. And then I can start moving them because now it's in a container. It's got its time in the thing, and then it's a paragraph. So now I can take it and I can move it wherever I need to. And then I eventually start, oh my goodness, I got 5 of these things. And they're like pretty much the same thought. So then let me move them over to here, move them over to there. And then like I start seeing other people. As I started adding into the notes, I started seeing other people saying, and I'm like, dang, where did I get this thought then? It either works because everybody's doing it, or it is an idea that's in the air. It's in the Ideaverse, and everybody can just take it and grab it. So then I'm wondering, well, where's it coming from? Is it a divine thought? Is it actually of good intentions, or is it a bad intentions? And does it work for me? And is it sustainable? Yes, it's sustainable, and yes, it works for me. And could I do it forever? Well, yeah. I mean, it has infinite power or whatever. It doesn't even need power, or doesn't need resources. It doesn't need this or that. And then would it work with a person like this or like that? Or, oh, of course, it's like, why not? So why weren't we doing that from the beginning? And then you start to realize, and then you start to look at the history of it. And then you start to see times tables, right? So as I start going through my notes, you start seeing the same times tables being brought up and the same times tables. And then you start, well, let me start putting people to this. And you start putting this and that. And then you start realizing that there's a lot of things in the information system that is written by the person that's available at the moment. So another video I'm going to write is called 15-2, and that's where the last 15 minutes that you've spent with somebody plus 2 events that they can remember is how they will think of you, right? So if you're, Neil Armstrong, the whole time they're going to be sitting there thinking about how you went to the moon, and then they could also be sitting there talking to you, and you've been talking about, something else, entirely. And then that could also be bringing up another event that happened. And then now they're like thinking about all these things and together, but it's causing them to think of you as a specific person. So the idea that I'm trying to convey is if you want someone to think of you at a certain light, in a certain person, as remember the highest of you, then you want to constantly float on that 15-2-2. So a lot of people are very charismatic about it, and they're very good. They will keep you happy. They'll make you happy. They'll only bring up happy situations. They'll try to bring up situations that possibly boost who you are. They'll also physically just try to stay very, good to you. And then they will maybe even tell a story about something that they've done in the past that you're not aware of. And then that story may link to another story that you've heard of them doing or that you've been a part of. And now you're thinking of two events. And then if they spend 15 minutes of being all buddy-buddy with you, and then, really selling that same idea of what they claim to be in those two stories, then you will be sold that this is who this person is. And you will forget, most likely, or not forget, but necessarily not focus on, because that's all you have the ability to focus on. And you'll let that person kind of take you down the road of whatever it is that they're trying to talk about. So for a salesperson, obviously they're trying to sell you something. It's pretty easy. They got a shirt on. It says what product they're trying to sell. For a friend or a family member, what are they really trying to sell you? And at the end of the day, most people are just trying to sell you time because they want your attention because they love you. And isn't it the same exact way the other way around? Like, don't you want their time and their attention to show that you are loved and that you're worthwhile? So that's kind of why it's worth it to be likable, and that's why it's kind of worth it not to just be an introvert. So when you can kind of figure out in your life what is a good zero, what makes you happy, how much of all of these words people want to throw around, what percentage of these words it is that you are, because every word can mean 100 different things. I mean, look it up in the dictionary and then look it up in another dictionary and then look it up to what they said it was 100 years ago. Why is it different? Well, electricity's going through the walls now, and we can talk instantly. So with all this fancy, fast talking, we just talk different. We talk different. So we just change the words and meanings of words and things like that. Yeah, we just change the words and meanings of words because it's a different day, and the word now means something different. Yeah, okay, I get maybe you're using different, but it's like, and then it's like you're just sitting there. Who's to judge, right? At what percentage? At that moment in the argument. That's the only time it matters. That's the only time anything ever matters, is in the argument. So if you can argue the point, what does it matter? So if you can go back to what does it matter, right? What does anything matter? Well, when you argue the point, you know what the point is. And when it's a life or death situation, you need to know the point. You need to know what's actually important and not. So when you are trying to do a life or death situation, if I'm gonna take it that extreme, right? I'm gonna take it a little bit more extreme. You're in the forest and you're all alone and you're this and that. What is most important, right? Water, sanitary water. You evolve to understand sanitary water as opposed to just water and this and that. So if you start looking at all these crazy ideas, why do we set up society the way that we do, and you yourself don't even get your own water? Oh, you have a well? Okay. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to that guy that goes off the city water or the whatever, buys bottled water. And that's like, what are you going to do? Like, literally, what are you going to do? You're literally dependent on somebody else's supply to your mouth. And every single cell, whatever the smallest little thing is, I don't even know. You are all of those, right? I think it's we'll just call them cells. So then, because I think something I saw that said that a male human being is up to 80-something trillion cells. I know I'm trying to be vague, and I'm trying to let you know that I'm vague because I don't want to quote this as if I know everything. I want you to know that I don't know everything so that you yourself will go, well, that's an idea. And that crazy guy said something about that. So maybe I'll go and look a little bit further into it before I go thinking that it's 100%. And that's why I kind of want to go through and make these videos before I sit there and iron out all these thoughts, and then I find out, well, I'm full of it, and oh, I said that kind of wrong, or I said this kind of wrong. So I thought, hey, maybe I'll get it out there. Maybe I'll see if a couple people see it and maybe even comment on it and see if it's helpful to you. Because the most important part, right? This is the most important part. It's at probably the end of the video, probably, or wherever and however I edit it, which I don't hope to edit. I just hope that I can just put something behind me so that I don't have to show my messy room. And then I can just work on making small, short videos and then possibly making some longer videos again. And then, so just keep working on it every single day. However, if I don't start somewhere, I will have nothing. And if I don't start with zero, then I don't think that the premise of anything else will kind of make as much sense, because the idea is that you want to start with the most important part, and that is silence. The reason you want to start with silence is any and everything that you want to communicate with already knows. You are communicating with all of the energy, God, nature, all of the atoms around you, all of the cells around you are all being interacted by your energy. With all those trillions of cells, they have measured out that each cell puts out like 0.07 volts. So if you think about all that voltage times that, and then you are higher or lower voltage based on what it is you're doing. So if you're well fed with certain materials, I'm going to say, or elements of the periodic table, it will cause your vibration to go higher. And then the way that you interacted with those elements before they entered into your digestive system, your gut, is all dependent on the way that you're going to receive them. So if you really had a microscope and you really were able to really, it's like, what is true zero? Like, what is true stop nothing? This is just a container. And the idea is, in silence, you can actually have everything slow down, calm down, and actually be able to create that pathway in your brain of something other than your verbal demands that you place in your head. In your head, you're like, oh man, I got to do this today. I got to do that today. All right, let me get my list. I'm going to make sure I got my list. It says, body, on my list, we got to do this. So get up out of bed right now. Okay, we're getting out of bed. We're getting out of bed. And then it's like you're getting everything to work, and it's like you think you have control over yourself, but you don't. So therefore, you have to treat yourself like a animal. And you can communicate with your body without a verbal thought. You can communicate to the world without a verbal thought. And when you start to remove your outward verbals, like let's say you're thinking out loud, all right, I'm talking out loud right now. I need to get the eggs and I need to do this. Like, that's one stage of thinking. Next stage would be like maybe whispering it, right? Then the next stage, not even knowing you're whispering it. And then the next stage would be like in your head, you literally hear your own, inner monologue thinking about it, which, of course, there's a certain percentage of people that all of this applies to or doesn't apply to, but it is a possibility, and it may come and it may go. It's different for every single human being. So the idea is for you to know where, or to remove what you're thinking and where you're thinking from a point of a language or a verbal communication, and more into just an understanding of what that exact thought is. Because the reason is you would want to remove any other biases or opinions or other people's or ancestors that have been before you. Their cells are in your body, and they could be resonating, and they could be technically speaking to you and influencing you in a specific way. And you could either be in sync with that, or you could be out of sync with that, and you could either be hearing it or not hearing it, or hearing it but not understanding what it is and causing you to not understand. And there's so many magical in the scope things that even once you start checking it with a multimeter, it's a whole nother world. So first you check it with a scope, and now I'm checking it with a multimeter, and now it's completely different. So with every single aspect of the way that the world works, and the more that they're able to decode it through higher abilities of computation, they're able to see more and more information, and it narrows further and further down to just singular pieces of information. So if you're able to do that with your mind, you should try to rest your mind for 3 minutes is the initial goal. And then, however long you think it should be after that. I only say 3 minutes because a scientist once said that if you were to rest your mind and be still for 3 minutes, it would reset your neurological system for you to kind of reassess like where you're at. Because the problem is that I always use car analogies. So like if you're driving your car and you go to check the alignment, it could be these sets of measurements, and then the mechanic checking the alignment could just kind of like breathe on it, and it would do another set of measurements. Like it could be a little bit off, a little bit whatever. Then you go out on the road and you hit a bump, and then you come back and check it. Now it's like a little bit more off. So with life, like you could be like, oh, I don't like Brussels sprouts. And then whenever you're a kid, a little bit like older, you're like, well, I don't like them, but I'll put them in my mouth and you'll get them down and I'll eat them. And then as you're older, you're like, they're actually pretty good. I kind of like them. I like to, eat them like without anything at all, or whatever. So the idea is that like taste buds, every year your cells completely regenerate. You want to find a baseline, and the only way that you can find a baseline is without the constant intervention of thoughts. If you knew that the thoughts that you were thinking every single day are actually coming from outward influence, which would be something other than your actual conscious mind, who you are, which is your conscious mind, then you would understand that you would control those thoughts, and you would say, no, I'm not thinking about that. That's beyond me. I'm not that person. And then you would eventually, every thought that you have would eventually add to new thoughts. Like, oh my gosh, I've never thought that I could think that thought before. Well, that's because you laddered up and over to these other thoughts. And whenever you're laddered over to these other thoughts, it caused you to have this realization or this neuro link. And it kind of is like connecting streets. Like, oh, I didn't know that 5th Street went all the way to Main Street. It's like I've only been on the north end of town. I haven't been on, the south end of town to know that that road went that way or whatever it was, So it's like streets. It's like a new map. You're writing a new map in your head. Now I've been there, done it once, so now I can do it again. And then the next time it's a little bit more, it's a little bit more familiar, and then it's a little bit more familiar, and it's a little bit more familiar, and then eventually, it's like nothing, So if you're able to do that with everything in your life, that's another video, easy button, then it'll be easy. It'll just be like a button, just pushing it. Getting back to zero, getting back to silence, getting back to nothingness allows you to figure out what is you, what is actually your thought, and it allows God, nature, your higher being, more of a Christ-like, more like Jesus, more like Yahshua. That whole idea, you would be a higher self than of you. You would be more like you. You would be more of what it is in your deep soul you have been wanting to do every single day, and it's just burning you. And every single person is different. That's why I don't want to say, oh, it's money, it's this or that, because at the end of the day, everybody wants to do an activity usually, and that activity is different, because life is a perfect blend of happiness and resistance, right? You don't want to be just perfectly happy all day long. You want to be also having some challenges. Well, the problem is that if you don't reset, you're going to be driving the wrong vehicle. And you're going to get down to the race, and you're going to look to your opponent, and you're going to be like, why is he in that much, much faster vehicle? I wish I would have researched this before I got entered into this race. And the problem is you don't realize you're in a race every single day. Because if you do not progress and you stay stagnant, you are technically falling behind. Because every single day you're getting a little bit older, you're getting a little bit more cells. The sun has rotated around us on and off multiple times, causing you to go through all these cycles. And with all these cycles, you're now progressing as a different person, whether you want to be or not. So if you're not becoming a higher and more intelligent, or more, maybe not even intelligent, because you don't necessarily need to be intelligent to do what I'm saying. You just maybe need to be more disciplined, educated, and open-minded. And then you need to just understand. And the reason being is because then you'll be invincible. Nobody can touch you. Oh, this guy comes up out of nowhere and blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, I already figured out what I'm doing and what I have going on and what I need to survive. So this interruption is that person's problem. He does not have jurisdiction. He does not have authority over me. I've already seeked my authority, and I have already established it onto myself through my discipline and my plan for my education and what I'm allowed to be open-minded on. So I don't need this other person coming in here and telling me what to do. So you then can know, or, previously decide or practice, and then decide from then on how to handle that person going forward. But as of this video right now, I only want to talk about you yourself and give you the idea that every day is a battle. But it doesn't need to be a battle if you know what the buttons are. Chess isn't difficult, or isn't a fight for a master champion, because he's literally like, oh, you just put your piece there and that piece there, and all I got to do is put this here, and then that's it. And then the next person's like, well, I got to figure this out, and then you're like, yeah, I knew that you were going to either do that or that or that or that. So now that you did that, I'm going to do that. It's like they have everything mapped out like a pilot. A pilot's like, we're going to rise up to blank feet, and then we're going to get up to this speed, and then we're going to this and that. Nobody drives like that. If you drove like that, there would be no traffic. We're all driving the same speed. As soon as we get on the highway, how am I going to hit you? How am I going to have to be slowed down by you? You're going the same speed I'd be going. Why are we going slower on the highway? Why are if there's two, you know what I mean? So that's a whole nother video. That's a whole nother video series. I don't even want to put that in these videos. It's so toxic, driving. It's like, would you really do that if I was face to face to you? Breathing down your neck? No, you wouldn't. My voice cracked. So there's so many things about health, daily wellness, and your overall conscious state that you can simply do every single day by just understanding what it is would be a natural state for you. So you want to stay in that. There's multiple states of consciousness. I believe there's 5. You want to stay in the top 2, which would be conscious state or confusion state. Confusion state, unfortunately, is inevitable. You will approach confusion state multiple times a day, or something that I would consider confusion state. And the reason I would consider it a confusion state is because you are not in control of the emotions and the events and the energies that flow around you at that moment. Because someone said something that is detrimental to what you're working on, what you're focused on, or something happened, or blah, 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 blah. Like some obstacle, so some normal thing that would normally happen in everybody's life that we could go as small as you're just in the house and blank, 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 blank. You stub your toe. You know what I mean? Whatever it is, come up with something. My point is as you're approaching it, how can you then approach it in a way that would not affect you and that you can continue to go towards your vision by achieving your goals? So if you're then able to center yourself and you're able to sit in silence, your body will able to reset itself neurologically, and then eventually your mind on a day-to-day basis would be a little clearer, and it would be a little bit more focused in on what it is that you want to do. And the problem is, I want to tell you all about all the things that you could do to plan and all that, but that's obviously another video. So what I want to tell you about is in the silence, you will be bombarded with thoughts and ideas, but don't let them fool you, because some of those thoughts are old from like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and they're just resurfacing now because everything else is shut up. Yeah, I said it. Shut up. Replay that part. Shut up. Because if you would just be quiet, some of these things can get through finally. So the idea is that once you're finally quiet, you're getting all these thoughts that are new, and then you push them away, and then all these thoughts that are kind of old, and they get pushed away, and then eventually now you got room for all the real old thoughts, and now eventually you're remembering what your mom told you when you're 3 years old, or blah 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 blah, whatever it is. Come up with something. So the idea of this particular part of the segment is that you will start to just be naturally, magically given through intuition, through whatever, these new ideas. And once you're silent enough, you can go through, okay, that's something I was working on before. Oh, I don't really like that thought because it doesn't really hold true with this and that. And then you can kind of go, okay, I'm going to just throw all these away. Then the next time it comes up, yeah, I'm going to just throw it away. Why does it keep coming up? And then you can kind of, well, it keeps coming up. And oh, okay, it's because of her perfume. My wife used to have that perfume, and I remember when she had that perfume, we used to live in that house. And because of that perfume, I remember this and da-da-da-da. Or maybe it's something as complicated as your mom keeps talking to you a certain way. Well, did you realize that other person talking to you in another way doesn't know they're doing it? They don't know what it is that you are feeling when they are saying what it is that they're saying or doing what it is that they're doing. So for you to be like, oh, I'm feeling this way now. No, you should just say, oh, I'm feeling that way right now. Okay. I'm feeling that way. Let me just keep going back to happy. But I remember this happened and that happened. That's all you need to do. And then by the 5th time, you're going to be like, oh, every time she does that, I get all upset. Okay. I don't care anymore. Like, why does she do that? Do I care? No, I don't care. Should you care? I don't know. As another person, what are you going to try to solve it? Are you going to get her to stop doing it? What power do you have over that situation? What jurisdiction do you have? At that point in time, it's your mom. It's your mother. Honor their mother and father. Make sure that you're always listening to them or always being happy. And you realize that a lot of times your parents feel an emotion and they say something to you based on that emotion and not based on what's best for you. There's no way for a human being to ever be at their best. You will always fall short. You will always be a percentage less. Unless you tap in to that full intuition, that full self that's inside of you, in that it's like you're always falling. You're constantly just in that state of adrenaline, in that state of moment where you're just in a flow. You're moving and grooving and just boom, boom, boom. And that's like the only moment you can ever really be 100% yourself. Maria, I'm going to murder her last name, so edit this out. Montessori? She was a pioneer in certain forms of school education. So I told you about her to tell you that in certain educations, they are much more open to how to educate and having a much more open education system. And they don't try to tell you at this time you're doing this or at this time you're doing that, in the sense of you have to be this by this grade and that by that grade. And she really focuses on the need for this as keeping them in a flow state. Because if you're in a classroom and if you have all these other scenarios that we go through in a current state, you drop into that confusion state a lot. And then the class just keeps moving. And then you're like gone. Well, sorry, bucko. That was your chance. The way that the curriculum is set up, you have to learn it in that small time frame, and then they move on. And that's why homework is so important. And so if you don't get it in class, it's all homework for you. And then it's all dependent on, however you're able to do it at home. Like, what are you going to use? What, so moving on. So with all of that in mind, keeping yourself in a flow state is the most effective way for you to live life and be happy and resisted properly to find that perfect meaning of life, which is just bliss and just that moment like of goosebumps, the moment, goosebumps. That's the meaning of life. You just want to have more moments like that, more moments of just, love, happiness, peace, things just working right. And realistically, when you look at your life, you don't always look at, when you look at a journey, how about that? When you look at a journey, you get a sense of how it went overall, and you get a sense of maybe how you were feeling, and you kind of put your own judgment from now on what it was. So what if looking back, you always looked back at everything being happy? And I laugh because it's kind of like you're lying to yourself if you do it in a certain way. But if you do it in another way, it's almost like that's just what it is, because it is what it is, right? So the old rice farmer, my son broke his leg. That's horrible, isn't it? No, I don't really know. Is it horrible? He ends up not having to go to the draft. And then something else happens. Oh, is that horrible? Well, I don't think it is. And then everything ends up being good if you're able to look at it being good, and if you realize that it's a perfect line of trending up and down of good and bad. It's all pretty much the same in the sense of what, it really matters at the end of the day, like what actually people do and interact and love and all the above. Same variable as for everybody. So silence, 0. 0 is 0, but it's also infinity. I could end the video there. That'd be the end of it, and that explains everything. You can start out by being silent, and then start out by not listening to some guy on a video just because he has a microphone, as opposed to just talking to a camera that has a microphone in general. And then really start to develop what's true, what's not true, based on what you think is true, and really try to hold the people around you, kind. Try to be nice. Understand that they're not doing or thinking probably what you think that they're thinking, and you also are probably persuading them to think what they're thinking, and I'll tell you that in the next video. And I really just want to talk about spheres. I want to talk about. So I'm going to probably make some more videos, but I'm going to try to end this one now. So please, if you've made it to this long, thank you very much, as they say. And I have no clue if anybody's going to watch this right now. It's number 1, number 0. Yeah, the start. So comment, subscribe, like, and let me know what you like, don't like, and share. Turn on notification bells. Yeah. Thank you. Have a good day.